All right, we're back at Himera. 70 years later, though. Excuse me. And the grandson of the original Carthaginian general sees an opportunity in the midst of the Peloponnesian War to take out hated Greeks from Syracuse. We've got kind of an interesting situation here. The Syracusans have just marched and reached Himera and thrown up a quick defense, a mixture of some of their heavy hoplite units and some reserves from inside the city itself. And they shock the hell out of Hamilcar, I think it is. Right? Who's got this kind of picket posted here along the stream, and then a main force up at the hill camp. The sea camp doesn't exist in this one. In terms of special rules, same defensive line here. Same rules with the city wall. The surprise is going to be handled simply by the setup, and Syracuse is allowed to pick any leader and go first on the first turn with that. Retreat edges are the same. We've got route numbers of 105 for Carthage and 70 for Syracuse. Syracuse has a much smaller army. There's a fairly potent force down here of the medium infantry, the light infantry, etc. Not a lot of heavy units though for Carthage, and not a lot of really good looking stuff here. If you look at the tactical qualities, yeah, there's 7s here. These are still irregular though, I think. And some here, which is pretty good. I mean, you don't have that good on those phalanxes either, but remember those phalanxes have a potential for toughness. Because they're not really high tactical quality guys, they're not immune. We saw last time, wow, they do break, with that 5 or 6 tactical quality. Alright, well, we'll give this one a shot too. The hard part to this one is Syracuse gets an initial decision of what unit they want to, attack with. Why that's particularly hard? Well, I got this stupid little line. I got to brush that out of the way. That stream is not much of a barrier. It provides no real defensive bonus. The only thing it does is it causes cohesion hits if you cross it. But only to infantry and chariots, so the cav would be fine. These peltists, there are special rules on them that I have to look up in the original. They're not... I think that it's just that they're stronger than normal light infantry in some way. They have their own charge. In which case there's no real... no, they don't. Not on the Clash of Spears. They do on the shock superiority. Okay. And those don't exist here. They're attack superior against skirmishers, and that's really it. And they don't. I can't find them here. There they are, light peltists. They give attack superiority to any of the heavier infantry, but not the medium. And their defender superior against most cav. But if I recall correctly, there's a rule that says not if they're out of missiles. So if they're attacking without their missiles, they lose some of their edge and they just become regular ground units. Alright, I think that's what it is. Anyway. Like I said, the hard part's making this decision of where in the line to crack and what I'm hoping to do from there. I'm allowed to pick one unit and activate it, and then immediately afterwards Carthage could activate this unit or that unit. Now, if I activate one of these, that means I get to activate this next. So I'm not going to activate the peltists first. So then the question comes to, well, do I go here or here? And I think I'm going to go with the northern side, or the, yeah, northern, because they're crossing reasonable terrain. This, most of them are, but this unit here is going to have to go down a slope. And I would rather see if I can roll up this flank first. This also looks like it's a bit more spread out and a little easier to crush through than this over here. I mean, this little bust through kind of worked. These hoplite units just aren't that sturdy compared to what I'm used to from hoplite or from maybe even the stuff that shows up in SPQR. These are pretty questionable units with 5 morale up there. These were the stronger units. We did rout away a couple of these lights, but at 2-to-1 size and, you know, advantages, attacker superior advantages on a class chart, we came already kind of pained. Got a momentum, and now the big question is, do we want to try to trump in with that? So I'm going to get to where I'm going to go with these units no matter what. The only question is how much I want to allow these guys to keep going forward. So if I trump in with one of these 5s, actually I'd be superseding a couple of units, but also some Syracusean units where they wouldn't get momentums. So that might be advantageous. I think I'm going to go for it. That's what my gut tells me. A lot of times you play this by gut. I'm going to see if he can trump in. And he succeeds in it, which means this guy's finished. And that's the end of that. So the peltists cross the stream here with some success, mixed. We had a wounding. There wasn't going to be a momentum anyway, but it took out his possibility of his non-existent charisma from coming into play. One thing that is interesting, though, this streamline, you know, it doesn't serve a lot of defensive purposes, so I'm thinking of falling back from it, but that's almost impossible. Turning around and moving your units away in this, and, you know, I have some gripes about that in, say, the Viva la Emperor series. But in this, it's absolutely appropriate. Man, you cannot just turn a melee unit around and march away in that sort of way. There's no covering fire, nothing like that to protect you. The difference, though, is these are lights, but they're not quite skirmishers, you know. So skirmishers have a lot more flexibility in that regard. So basically, I kind of have to stand on the line. And the reason I was thinking was, well, being bright on the stream doesn't terribly help those units. If they were a space back, they might break the enemy a little quicker. On the other hand, a successful attack means crossing the stream, perhaps, and weakening yourself. But overall, I think the defensive position would be better a little behind the stream and let the opponent get across. And it makes sense if you think about melee units. Being right up against the stream like that, but it means that if you push forward at all, you're in the water. Of course, your enemy is going to be attacking you through the water, and that doesn't have any effect on play, so screw it, right? But yeah, just in terms of the, it almost feels like there was a Miranda game recently on the Franco-Prussian War where you didn't want to defend the river lines because there was some serious disadvantage to doing so. This isn't quite that extreme, but it does bother me a little bit. So what I'm left with is trying to decide what to activate out of my 4 pointers. I guess I'll activate this one because I want some flexibility after he's hit. But here's the thing, if I wait, he gets hit. And then I don't really have that flexibility. But I don't have much I can do. I guess I could rally these. That's probably my best move. Things went poorly. Syracuse marched forward with these forces, smashed through much of the line, but the big problem, in individual combat against Hamilcar, our main leader here, Diocles, who had a higher personal combat rating, ended up getting killed, which is an extreme range difference. We were talking, but you know, you're both rolling 10-sided dice, so there's a huge span possibility there. But there was a +1 bonus for him, and there was a 6-point difference, including that bonus. So, you know, we were talking about something like, I don't remember, a 2 and a 9 or something like that, and it just, boom. So that was a pretty severe effect, because that's going to wipe out some of the command and control capacity here. It really puts Syracuse in an impossible position. They're also down 20 points because of him right away. This battle's over. It's just a matter of, you know, letting it find out that it is. The turn was pretty much over. The Syracuse and Cav moving over here. Carthage straightening up their lines, a failure, but triggered a die roll of doom on the momentum for the final Carthaginian commander. And just making sure that he actually is finished. The result is a reactivation. So now I get to pick someone and do something with him. This might not be a bad choice to try to recover some of his units. Yeah, I gotta check recovery. I think 2 hexes is no good. I know missile range is no good, but I don't remember if 2 hexes is okay. The problem with the particular initiative system that Great Battles of History uses is sometimes things don't happen that are terribly interesting. So, for example, Hamilcar back here rallied some units and it failed. We had some peltists come here and drive away some of these skirmishers. And an accumulation of little events that are just not that impressive happens. That's what's happening here. But then we had the center, the former Cav commander, actually moved forward some of the hoplites and is driving forward with peltists as well. It's kind of this mishmash because I'm giving individual orders out to units. One thing I notice I'm forgetting, I caught it in a situation where it didn't apply. The peltists ran up on this thing and attacked it, and they can do that. But if a hoplite moves up on one of them light guys, they can orderly withdraw. And that would have been one of the interesting questions is, did I want to stand on the stream, or did I want to do what I saw as more valuable, which is fall back a space anyway, make the attacker take the extra hit for marching forward. I don't know the answer to that. There are painful restrictions on the line commands in this particular game, the Alexander game, are really showing themselves here. So, for example, who's this? This dude. Who's a fairly decent commander, has on his other side an L. Commanded a few of his cav, moved them forward, then fell back. There was a huge infantry formation here. Well, I couldn't command it all as a line because I've already triggered a non-line action on my first attempt. Actually, if I hadn't scattered quite as much, like if I had settled down on just my cav and moved only them, I could have done another line action, but I have to make a roll to succeed in that. Anyway, we're trying to form something up. It's really hard to put together, you know, a formation. And I've got this flank hanging out here because I've got units I want to get into that, you know, into that line there, so that I can march forward with one big, powerful force. But I may be leaving things open that I don't want to. Of course, these guys can't move because Syracuse is out of activations at this point, unless something weird happens, like a die roll of doom. Wherever we are turn-wise, end of third turn or something like this is where we are. A bunch of routing Carthaginians. But Syracuse lost another one of, one of their big guys, and they have less points total, so they're a lot closer to their breaking point. The real problem, though, is, and I'm having this with both armies, I'm really having a great deal of difficulty maneuvering my forces at this point and trying to get them aligned. And you saw that with this, with the align commands, etc. But even here, I'm having some hard time. Although I have, but it started with better leadership, but now with one of the main leaders gone, I probably have less of a proportion of effective leadership on the Syracuse line. So it's actually, even though it's a smaller line with less units, having a harder time getting itself, you know, into an organized position. I think it's going to take me a few more scenarios before I kind of have a feel for GBOH again, to the extent of keeping my pieces together. Things have been pretty easy because recently, the last couple of years, all I've played, not a lot of it either, is Hoplite. And a little before that, Chariots of Fire. Hoplite, generally, you don't have to keep a really close formation. In fact, you've got these hoplite units running across the map and kind of breaking away from each other. And you didn't have to worry about forming up the way you do in this. In this, it's much closer to the SPQR type situation, where you really have to set up your line commands and prepare your attacks in a way that I'm not really familiar with doing anymore. Okay, so this guy, Hamilcar here, one of the many Hamilcars through history, launched what almost amounted to a line attack, and it would have really been helpful if I could have gotten the extra unit in, because what ended up happening, I failed the die roll, but I ended up happening is getting one medium infantry against each of these phalanxes here, or hoplite. I mean, in hoplite they're called hoplite phalanxes when they're that big, right? Chucked my javelins. Generally, things didn't go terribly well, and you can see two of those units are routed back. Here it was a little more interesting. I'm hitting from the flank. Wow, attacker superior, javelins and everything. I think this ended up at 11 tactical quality hits total, which means +5 on the die roll. I roll a 0. Hey, it held up. I was at least expecting to be able to knock that thing out, and instead I pretty much expended a lot of my force on very little positive effect at all. Didn't get a momentum either. Cav charge over here kind of starts breaking up the edge of the Carthaginian line over here. It's interesting, the cav charge, I'm playing with the optional rules. I expected them to, I don't know, be of some importance. They are when you're fighting other cav, but they're really not otherwise, because the way they work is they prevent you from getting shock superiority. Not off of positional, that doesn't matter, but only off the shock superiority chart. And I'm looking at heavy cav here. Well, they don't have superiority except against skirmishers and lighter cav. What the hell? You know? I was here expecting that I needed to form up into a wedge or something to be able to slam into the infantry. Well, no, I can do that just as well either way. And against the medium infantry, high quality cav doesn't really have to create that special formation, which is exactly where I thought I'd need that density, is smashing into the infantry. I guess the idea is that you kind of pass through and start hacking up the infantry, and you don't really want that density, or else you're just going to collapse. But that density against cav makes more sense somehow in terms of blunting the other cav side. I don't know. I don't know the rationale behind it, but it did not meet my expectations in terms of what happened. We did knock some of the lights here out of the way finally, and we'll see what else. Carthage still has to try to form some kind of line. These big units have kind of the advantage that I don't have to command too many of them to get some pretty heavy impact. With these, I have to try to figure out some way to line them up and get them to work together like I did here, but even then it's not a guarantee, because those those hoplites can just say, yeah, that hurt. Oh well. Up the 4 initiative leaders, who is this? Himera, something like that. He managed to rout a whole bunch of his light infantry back there. Destroy routed ones by trying to rally him. He also launched an attack this way. And it chased the cav back a little bit, but finally the cav was getting pushed up against the hoplites, and they had to stand and fight. And they did okay. I think overall the cav did the better job here. Although one cav unit did get smashed here, and then an attempt to rally by this guy killed that off. So our points now are at 46 to 36. This table's horrible to write on because of the creases on it. I'm always iffy whether I shouldn't have even bought, well, not buy, drag this thing up. It was just such a pain in the ass. So now all that's left is the high quality Carthaginian leaders. Looks like we're getting to play with all the rules here. So over here, whoever was in charge, and I haven't flipped these guys back over, this guy, he ended up forming up a stronger line, preparing for an assault. And then our overall commander here launched, was preparing to rally, started rallying his forces and was preparing to strengthen that position a little bit more, maybe even launch an attack. But on his first momentum roll, he ended up getting the die roll of doom and crisis of faith. So all his units pulled back, and a lot of that effort that, well, all the ones within 3 hexes of him, a lot of the effort that was put into, recovering was lost because of this hilly terrain. It doesn't look like much, but man, the cohesion hits from any kind of terrain are just so painful in this. Kind of reminds me of the White Mountain, well, not White Mountain, the whole, not just White Mountain, the whole of, which one is it? Saints in Armor down there from the Musket and Pike series. And for that matter, the Scanian War one, Nothing Gained But Glory or whatever. Both of those have kind of rougher terrain than most of the Musket and Pike series, and you really kind of have to put your units into open order or whatever in order to move around. In the same way here, you kind of want to maybe consider putting yourself into column. There's just so many disadvantages in both cases, and you really can't afford to operate in those in column in this situation when you're close to the enemy. So if there's any fighting happening around here, you're going to pay some prices in the cohesion hits. I think the prices are less in this. Recovery is a lot harder in Musket and Pike than it is here. Anyway, point-wise, failed rallies, guys running off the map, it's now 61 out of that 105 to 36 out of 70. So it's not as clear a blowout as it looked like it was going to be. I thought Syracuse was just screwed losing their main leader. But as it stands, maybe my mishandling of Carthage's infantry, having too much trouble getting them into line or whatever, is definitely costing something. But this stuff is just crap. And it is really hard to deal with. And you've got this hard choice of, do I want to rally it or just let it run off the map? Either way, you're going to probably pay. I mean, if you let it just run, you can do other things and maybe win the battle before the timer runs out in terms of your routed crap running off the map. If you try to rally it, you might save some of them, but you're not going to save many. These guys, these guys have a 60% chance of recuperating a unit, so it feels pretty good, but when you're down to the 4, it's 50%. It's like, especially if you've got the choice of, do I try to rally with this guy, or maybe wait until somebody who's more capable has an action and let him do it. I tend to go for the rallies, and you can definitely see the cost to that kind of thinking right up there. The end's coming close. We were able to hit the medium infantry, hit some of the cav. That was more to do soak-off type attacks, Ended up getting those two phalanxes both with, wow, hoplites, both with some flank attacks, which ended up breaking both of them, although some of them one of them required multiple hits, actually. That's going to be another 20 points here. That puts it to 56, only 14 away. On the other hand, I don't know, it's pretty hard to break anything else. These are tougher units than these 5-pointers, and so is this one. So they're a little harder to budge. It looks like I have to take out one of the real ones, unless I can pick on those poor peltists somehow. Very fatigued. A number of actions, actually. Slammed some of the cav up here. This is one leader doing all this. Then some recovery and hit with the hoplites here, along with some of the peltists, and really gained a lot of ground across the board. Killed another unit, another one of them light infantry, I think, this time. Yeah. I know I'm hitting mediums and everything. We're up to 66 there, so that's pretty impressive. With an unsecured flank, a bunch of cav was able to get around, prevent a proper retreat, driving another one of them hoplite units out. We're up to 48. Now there's 20 in the bank, though, that ends this turn, so that's 68. It's basically over here. And with some of these excellent Iberian lights hitting the phalanx and including another flank attack, we actually drove 2 of the units back, one with a route through, into routes. So now instead of 20 extra points, there's another 26, 46 more points. That puts us in the 90s. It's over. The Carthaginians do not even have to take the rest of their activations, and there are none left for Syracuse. So, you know, we could try to knock our own points down, but obviously that would be foolish. So yeah, this is another victory for Carthage, and I'm really having a tough time making these big hoplite units that are kind of low morale. They're not all low morale. 7 isn't bad at all. 6 is fair, but there are enough 5s and such not that Syracuse is just not holding up well. I think we're going to be taking a step away from the Alexander game for a little bit, and I got something else. Yeah, I don't want to go through, you know, 30 scenarios or whatever of this all at once, so I like to shake things up a little bit. All right, let's send this one up.